Hi, I'm Michelle Shingler, the editor-in-chief of Foreword Reviews, and you're tuning into Petit Foreword, our bite-sized interviews with indie authors. Today we're speaking with Leah Hager Cohen, whose latest book, To and Fro, releases on May 21st. It's a luminescent novel that makes treasures of childhood wonder, whose heroine's curiosity reflects the wisdom of the sages. Leah, thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Thank you, Michelle.
So your stories are told in a flip and turn format. So you can either begin with in Annie's world with a kitten, a bicycle, and a vague but insistent pull toward an unknown destination, or in Anime's New York neighborhood, where the obstacles are only more everyday on the outside. Would you prefer that readers begin with one story over the other?
No, we really tried to make it um, equally accessible from either side. And somewhat to my chagrin, we had to sort of give away which was the front cover and which was the back cover by putting the ISBN code on one side. And of course, there is the fact that the idiom is to and fro, not fro and to. But that notwithstanding, people should feel free to enter wherever they like. And also, I've heard that, some readers actually like going back and forth or to and fro if you like.
Can you talk a little bit about the challenges of writing a book in this format?
Yeah. I mean, one big challenge was like, this was not a plan. I didn't set out to have a, sort of unusual format. And in fact, when in the process of writing, when I realized I had sort of two narratives that seemed to be in relation to each other, and then gradually it seemed like not only were they in relation to each other, but they weren't, it wasn't about arranging them sequentially in linear fashion. I felt that the two protagonists and the two narratives themselves were like yearning toward each other, reaching toward each other. And so that's when I thought, oh, well, as a physical object, this book, you know, to honor that would need to be printed in this way where you start on one side and you read one story, and then when it sort of ends in the middle, you flip it around and begin the other story, so that we could experience that reaching toward each other. And then as soon as I thought that, I was like, oh no, that's gimmicky. I don't want to be gimmicky. But the book itself kept sort of seeming to press this desire upon me.
Yeah, it's fabulous. It's so fantastic to read. So for anime, writing fiction is inconceivable. It's akin to taking away her character's free will. How would you, as an accomplished writer who works in both fiction and nonfiction, discuss those concerns with her?
Yeah, so even though Anime, for most of the time that we know her, she's about 12 years old. She's a kid. She wasn't raised with religion. Um, she has this deep sense that I think I can only describe as religious or like theological. She's had it since she was a little kid. And so for her, that question, it's really a theological question. It's related to loneliness, this existential loneliness, and to the question of free will. And so when her English teacher gives her an assignment, that you have to create fictional characters. Oh, hello, cat. Um, um, she she has this line. She says, "Not even God would do such a thing." And what she means by that is create characters that have no free will of their own. And so for her, that's the sticking point. And for me, as a writer of fiction, um, it was interesting discovering only through the process of writing Anime's story that there is a little bit of tension there for me. If anybody who's creating art is creating it out of a desire to sort of reach out toward the unknown, the ineffable, that which we can never fully know. Um, I think like it has to be undertaken with a sense of humility, and I will speak for myself. For me, it is informed by a desire for the artwork to be to be a little bit alive and have a life of its own that's beyond my control.
So, Anime and Annie also both contend with loss very early on. What do you think their lost parents, would say to the girls in the midst of their hardships if they could?
So I love this question because it never occurred to me to think about that question, particularly Anna May loses her father before she's a baby, so she doesn't have a memory of him. Annie loses her mother, after having had a very um, really intimate relationship with her mother, and then she's about 7 years old when she loses her mother. So we could perhaps imagine a little bit more because we know a little bit more of Annie's mother, what Annie's mother might say to her. But the other thing I love about your question is that I think it speaks to, in some ways, what the book is about. This desire to communicate with, both to put a message out toward and to receive a message back from some essence where we know it's not going to happen. It's not possible. There's this communion that will never happen because the desire is to connect with, not a currently living mortal who exists within our realm. And so that desire itself, which we know will never be sated, is like looking for what's the value in honoring that desire in and of itself.
So Anime also benefits from her friendship with a rabbi, a family friend, who teaches her that the white space between the blocks of text is sometimes the most important part of it because it makes room for our questions. This notion pulls from Jewish mysticism. How else did mysticism inform the girls' stories?
Yeah, so it's funny. I don't like, I would not like to categorize myself as, a mystic or being interested in mysticism in what a rabbi I know calls like the woo woo sense, but I studied with this rabbi who would say that spirituality isn't about sort of belief in what's not there. Spirituality is about being able to better be present, like in reality. Um, and I find that tension fascinating, right? Because in a way, it's it's completely grounded in reality to acknowledge there exists that which we will never know, we'll never understand, we'll never be able to quantify or pin down. That that's a that's reality testing right there to be able to say that. And then one thing we can do with that is be terribly unnerved and scared by that and sort of push it away. And another way of responding to that fact about reality is to sort of move with curiosity and wonder into that space. And so I do think, like, for me, the book itself is an act of like moving with curiosity and wonder into something that's beyond me ever to fully comprehend.
That's fantastic. So if you could poke a finger through the water into one of the girls' worlds, would you?
Yeah, so I think it's okay to say that the both stories come to, I won't say an ending, but they come together and meet um, literally at a body of water. And for me, that as I gradually realized while I'm writing the narratives, because I didn't know where they were going to end up, um, as I realized, oh, both of these girls are moving toward a kind of meeting place. They're both going to be sort of kneeling before or, right up at a body of water. And that experience of looking into the still surface of water and seeing, we know we might see our reflection. We know we might see something beyond our reflection. And that, I mean, it's there in Greek myth, right? It's probably there in mythologies from cultures around the world, that sort of sense of, or there in Lewis Carroll, right? Through the looking glass, that desire to sort of break through some kind of fluid barrier, which is what the experience of water becomes there at the end. Like, yeah, my, I think my desire for these two protagonists at the end was to be as near as one could possibly get to being able to reach into that fluid space and connect. But I will say that any such connection eventually would have to play out in the minds of readers.
It's such a wonderful adventure. I think people are going to love it so much. What else are you working on right now?
So I am working on another novel, and I don't think that this one is going to be so unconventional in form. Um, although you never know because I don't have a clear plan. I tend to write sort of putting myself at the mercy of what I don't know when I write. That's sort of the wildness and the spark of it for me is not really knowing where I'm going. Um, but it's a story that begins with another young female protagonist who's sort of trying to make sense of the adults around her, the communities around her, and then her own evolving sense. This protagonist does grow older throughout the course of the narrative. So figuring out what it means to cross that fluid boundary between childhood and adulthood, which is another kind of right, like taking a deep breath and then plunging in.
We can't wait to see that as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. Um, to our audience, please remember to pick up this book. It's magical. It hits bookstores on May 21st, and you really won't want to miss it.
Thank you so much.